Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break IL, a look at speedrunning, game development, content creation, and everything in between. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for watching and listening and liking and all that fun jazz. It really does mean a lot to me, and I really do appreciate it. For this one, I'm going to talk about coaching as it relates to speedrunning. And it's something I hadn't experienced really until recently. And I had what was going to turn out to be kind of like Eon was going to show me the ropes for Zelda II, 100% all keys. And it's something she has offered up many different times. And I finally had some time to actually do it. And it turned out into this like really awesome experience that I had. And I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit about it and at least what I experienced, some pros and some cons that might go along with coaching. I know that there are some folks out there who offer coaching as a service. And then there are a lot of people who end up just coaching other folks just for fun because they love it and enjoy it and all that kind of fun stuff. I think both of those are totally valid. And I just want to preface that, but this is not any passing judgment on that kind of stuff. I just wanted to share some of my experiences with it and how I think it's making me a better speedrunner. It sure as hell is speeding up the process of learning the speedrun. And you may or may not know, but I've been in this, it seems like now a year-long process of trying to learn the Zelda II 100% all keys speedrun. It's just a game I've always wanted to do and get to, and I don't have a lot of time to do it. So getting some actual really pinpoint accuracy instruction is really quite helpful and quite useful. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to be showing, this is the actual session here on the side of the screen. And in the little box that's on the side here, and I'll use my mouse here, this little box here, this is actually Eon playing the game over Discord. And she would watch what I would do and then tell me what to do and then tell me all kind of the highlights and stuff that I could do as a beginning speedrunner of this game. And then also when I get a little bit more advanced where I want to look next. And we were using save states and stuff like that. And this is my gameplay on the main screen. And one of the first things that I realized off the bat during this session was that having somebody be able to identify to you what you're doing wrong or what you can improve upon, that in and of itself, huge benefit and kind of really can't put how important that is. Now, the next part of that is how do you fix that? And that becomes just as important. But the fact that you can identify and say, oh, you know what, I'm doing this incorrectly, or I could be doing this more efficiently or faster or better, was something that I didn't realize how important that was until somebody was telling me how to do it. You know, one of the things when I've learned to speedrun, sometimes I'll watch other people's tutorials if they're available. Other times I'll watch the task or I'll watch some other runner who is running the game and see, oh, what are they doing and can I try doing that? And that is definitely in part, as far as my process goes, a really important part of it. But there are so many other things that, I don't notice until after I watch my speedruns. I've talked about this a couple different times, but one of the ways that I've improved on certain runs is actually watching my runs after I've done them. And I can identify, oh, I messed up that. I messed up that jump. The jump was late. The jump was early. But having that feedback in real time by somebody who knows the game inside and out was just absolutely amazing. And it happens throughout the entire run. So I typically speedrun, play games, stream anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. That's my wheelhouse. After about 3 hours, I find myself getting tired and losing focus sometimes. We went for over 5 hours to get this thing done. And I wasn't sure how it was going to last. But thankfully, I had a pretty good meal before we started. And Eon was just great at showing me, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Watch out for this, watch out for that. And it just was amazingly helpful. The next part about this was with a game like Zelda II, this category, it's over an hour long. Even the fastest speedruns in the world are over an hour long on this one. So there is a fair amount to remember. There's some important routing you want to remember. And having somebody show you how to actually do that, wow, is awesome. There are some great tutorials out there from many different members of the Zelda II community, and of some of of a lot of games have their own tutorials built in, and it's helpful to just pause, play along with it, try to learn those strats yourself. But having somebody tell you where to go in real time just felt completely different than going along with a tutorial. One of the first tutorials I ever tried using was when I was trying to learn SMB3 Warpless, when Check Attacks had done a tutorial that is awesome. It's so fantastic. And I think it's still actually very, very usable today. And in fact, when Chuck was on the podcast episodes ago, I even mentioned it to him that I think people are still using it. If you look at the views, people are still watching it. And so there's tons of value in those individuals who have taken the time to actually create a tutorial. At the same time, there's this extra little piece where little Ian can say, oh no, you want to actually go up a tile, over a tile, down a tile. So, in Zelda 2, there's all these overworld encounters, and we can manipulate some of it depending on routes we take on the overworld and other things that we do. And having her be able to tell me what to do with those specific things was amazing. Like it made things click. I'm going to actually go back and watch my 5-hour stream of this and take notes the next time. I haven't had a chance to go do a run yet because I was prepping for another marathon, playing some other games. But knowing that I went through this once, I know what it feels like in the fingers to do some of these things right. And I can also use them as notes. I know many people use notes when they're doing speedruns. I've seen them, even folks at the most expert level, when you get on a GDQ stage, I've seen people with notes on there, because sometimes some of these games, 7-8 hour runs, how do you remember all that stuff? I have no idea. So the fact that I'm going to be using some notes, I'm not embarrassed or ashamed about. And I think that's a really helpful thing. Like, Eon has now given me the notes that I need that will actually be valuable to succeed at the run. So very cool aspect of that part. The other part of this is knowing kind of how to set up save states, if you have access to save states to learn your speedrun. I got to tell you, it was actually really helpful. I didn't think that would be a part of this, but when Eon was going through this, we were putting, throw a save state here, throw a save state here, and you want certain things. That's actually really helpful to know for practicing purposes. I've mentioned this before, but a lot of the games I run are on TurboGrafx 16. We don't have save states on any hardware solution yet. Coming soon. Crix has done some work on this. Very excited about it. So if I've had to use save states, I've had to use the TurboGrafx 16 Mini or BizHawk. And both of those, compared to actually playing on, original hardware or the Mister, have a different input delay or an input lag compared to the hardware. And so it's great to learn some of the mechanics, but it doesn't always translate perfectly. In fact, there was this trick in Bonk's Revenge I remember doing that I just could not. I could do it fine on a save state in BizHawk, and then as soon as I went to the hardware, it would just fall apart. And I don't know if it's because of, it was the frame window that I had to do the inputs in. Anyway, my point getting at this is that knowing where to throw a save state and how to actually practice something was another way. I think that's just going to speed up the process of me learning the speedrun. Another thing, another pro, if you will, about getting a coach or having a session with a coach. It's obvious they care about the game. And there is just something about being around somebody who is passionate about the game you're trying to play. It is infectious. It's an intangible thing that you can't really describe, but wow, does it help. Huge benefit. Just hearing Eon's excitement about this game, who, by the way, she's put in thousands of hours at this point. The fact that she's still passionate about it, definitely I feel that, and there's something that gives me a little bit more extra oomph, some vibes, some energy to go ahead and to try and continue on and push past and try some things that I wasn't capable of doing yet, which was super cool. Another thing is that Eon, and I've seen other coaches, I've watched, the Hacksaw, who was just on the previous episode, he's streamed some of his coaching sessions, and being able to identify things that the coach thinks you're going to be able to achieve, even though you can't achieve yet. Oh, wow. Is that awesome? It's good for the positive vibes to keep you optimistic and keep trying some new things. But once again, it's sometimes tough to identify ourselves what we're good at and what we're bad at. We have this, we have our own vision and our own ideas of our own self, what we're capable of. Coaches are looking at it completely objectively, right? So it's so interesting that Eon was able to identify some things that I wasn't sure I'd be capable of. And yet she's like, you're going to learn this. You're going to learn this. It's going to be fine. And I've noticed Hacksaw did that in his coaching sessions that I've watched as well. Super cool, super fun. And then I think perhaps this is the most obvious one, but one of the benefits of using a coach is just the Q&A session. There was nothing that I hesitated to ask Eon while we were doing this. And now, in all fairness, I probably didn't remember every single question that I wanted to ask her and that I could think about as far as Zelda 2 goes. But when things did pop up, I would just ask, she would answer, we'd move on. I'd have that knowledge. And if you're streaming it, or even if you're not streaming it, but if you're recording your session, to be able to go back and to actually look over that and to have that knowledge there, it's interesting because, especially, let's take a game like SMB1, right? We have all of this institutional knowledge about SMB1. Sometimes, though, it's not always in a central location. And gosh, we've talked about this on the podcast a couple of times before that. Yes, okay, SRC, speedrun.com has, we've been able to put guides and resources, all that stuff in central locations. It's still not always, it's not easy to query. It's not easy to search. That's not, that can be a challenge sometimes. And sometimes things get discussed during streams or on Discords that, you have to go back and try to plow through quite a bit of information and data to get to. So when you have a coaching session one-on-one where you could just, anything you think comes into your mind, hey, just ask. It's pretty awesome that that's something you can do. And that instant feedback is just, you really tough to put a value on that. It's just, as far as like my development and my learning the game, I'm sure it's going to be huge. It's interesting because I guess I'm trying to remember how many games. At this point, I speedrun 10 or 15 different games, and I've never done anything like this before. I've definitely chatted strats, chatted discoveries, things like that with other runners of games that I run, but never having done something like this. I'm honestly a little bit surprised in myself that I hadn't tried something like this before. I guess I'd never asked anybody, and the fact that I never asked Dion, she just, was nice enough and generous enough to just say, hey, do you want to try this? I'm forever thankful for, because now if I don't know what games I ever want to do next. There was a tweet that went out recently. Hey, if you had an unlimited time, what are the top 5 games, you'd learn? And one of mine is Breath of the Wild, 100%, which is like a 24-hour speed run. I don't know if I'll ever have time for something like that, but going through a coaching session like that, I got to imagine it's going to feel the same thing like this with Zelda 2, where it really speeds up the process and just like turns it up to 100 as far as like learning and being efficient with your learning. So what are some of the drawbacks of coaching? Well, there's a couple of them that I can think of. Number one is that I do think when people provide a service like this, it's okay that they get paid. Like some people, this is how they make their living, is through content creation and speedrunning and stuff like that. And so if somebody, I feel very fortunate that I got this for free. I would, I can understand why people would charge for some of these services. I don't know how successful it's been because a lot of people, in fact, I would guess the overwhelming majority of people speedrun just for fun. It's a casual thing for them. And so spending money on something like this might be a little bit weird for somebody, or might not be in their wheelhouse. And you hate to see that something gets gatekeeped by, some sort of cost allowed to it. But I do see that, coaches, Eon gave me 5 hours of her time. That's worth something, right? So, and she did it for free, by the way. So this was amazing that I got this coaching for free. I think another con is that there is definitely some value to discovery for yourself. I've seen many speedrunners talk about this, that, one of the ways that they learn a speedrun is by discovering some of these strats themselves. There are also a lot of games that, haven't been optimized or that don't have a big community around them. I think of a lot of the games that Lehok speedruns. He discovers a lot of these things on his own, the optimal strats, optimizing everything and doing something, as fast as possible. When there's nobody on the leaderboard, you're kind of on your own doing this. And I do feel like that's a value to that. So when somebody's coaching you through it, you're not going through it, experiencing it yourself, or discovering it yourself. You're going to go through it yourself, but the discovery aspect of that doesn't exist. And so that's a slight con to it, that maybe that's something that, you maybe a value to you. Another thing that is probably, I don't know, it's not a con, it's just something I've noticed, is that if you take a game, I always point to SMB1 as kind of an example, because that game is, for all intents and purposes, is really close to as optimized as we think is humanly possible. And so there's this huge community that's been around it, and there are a lot of individuals who can help you learn the game if you want to. I just tweeted the other day, like, I can't believe there's over 300 people who have a sub 5 in SMB1. Like, that just blows my mind. And that's because of all the knowledge that's been gathered, but then people can help each other out, that kind of stuff. Games that I run, let's Power Golf, for example, there's 6 or 7 of us, there's not a ton of runners. And so we, first of all, haven't discovered this, maybe what some of the things that the game is capable of. And at the same time, coaching you through it, if I were to coach you through Power Golf, I don't know how much that would help you out. One, because my sum of best and my actual time are like 2 minutes apart. But then also, like, there's still so much to be discovered in the game, I feel like, at this point. So the coaching, I think, really plays a great part for games that there are individuals who have spent a lot of time on them, is what I'm saying. And I guess that kind of, I'm going to leave it there because it's something that I'm glad I went through, and I would absolutely consider doing it again. And if it's something maybe you've hesitated about or were curious about, maybe this gives you some insight into what speedrunning coaching would look like. Now, if you want to go see it actually in real time, I posted the whole 5-hour thing to my YouTube channel. Totally get if you don't want to sit through 5 hours of learning Zelda 2. But maybe you can watch it for a few minutes or a few seconds, and you can see kind of what the whole experience was like and why I'm so positive and literally came apart from it energized. Even though it was 5 hours and I was exhausted at the end of it, I came out of it wanting to play the game right away. If I didn't have to prep for this marathon, which, by the way, I'm so glad I did. Junkyard Dave, love you. Great marathon. But that I was ready to I wanted to try a run literally after this 5 hours, which for me is very unlike me. I know many people can play games 8, 10 hours, 12 hours days. I wish I could. Sometimes I don't have it in me, but literally came away from the coaching session like jazzed and wanting to do some runs. So first of all, big thanks to Eon for showing me and walking me through all this. I'm linking to the video and all the big thanks and props go to her, and also all of the information that's been collected in the Zelda 2 community that makes something like this possible. And then if you have any thoughts on coaching, maybe you've gone through it or maybe you do coach, throw some comments down there. Like, I'm curious to hear if people have any experience there, or maybe you think this might be silly. I'm curious what folks think about coaching and speedrunning, because I honestly don't know. I don't have a thumb on this pulse, but I am curious to think what the community thinks about it. So anyway, that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for listening and watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free, subscribe, like, leave a comment, all that stuff people say at the end of a video. It honestly all goes a long way to help the podcast. Thank you so much. If you want to join us on Discord, we chat mostly about food, but occasionally we do talk about the stuff that's in the podcast. The link is in the show notes or in the description. Feel free. Come on by, join us. If you want to follow on Twitter, Sequence Break PC. Sequence Break PC. I post when I go live. It's kind of not at a set time, so if you want to see the live feed of the podcast, feel free, follow there. And finally, if you want to email, podcast@sequencebreakpodcast.com. Sequencebreakpodcast.com is also where you can find the backlog of all of the episodes. It's also on YouTube as well, so feel free, join in, have some fun. Thank you so much. I will see ya in the next one.